For that. My first guest this morning is a very well-written individual, and she's here to talk to us about a book that's going to publishing date is coming out next month. So we're kind of getting a sneak preview on this. She's also going to be in the front parlors of Centenary College next week, and it is none other than Maryann McFadden. Good morning, Maryann. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm excited to be here.
And I am to have you. You've done other books here. We've talked about things, but this one here is really pretty amazing. I see the development of you beside the development of all the things that happened in this book and the reflection on the past and the present day. I think start out by telling us what led you in the first place to doing this book. You've grown up around here?
Yes, I have. We actually moved from Brooklyn to Hackettstown in 1964. So I was just a little girl. We lived near Union Cemetery in Kenwood Village. And I was basically out exploring one day, and of course there's the river and the bridge. So I found myself in the cemetery roaming, and there I was suddenly in front of this monument to Tilly Smith. Now, as a little girl, reading the words carved into the monument, she died in defense of her honor, erected by an appreciative public. I didn't really know what that meant, but that was just the beginning of what became a lifelong obsession eventually to know who Tilly really was.
I think a lot of us wonder about the person. We've heard the story. Many people do the walk around Halloween. There's the historic walk that the Centenary puts on. And there's so many different aspects of it. But this one here, it really kind of relates her to us.
Yes. My goal in writing this book was to actually bring Tilly Smith to life, because what I discovered in my years of research, and I've been working on this book for more than almost 5 years, was that Tilly became really a footnote in the story of her murder. Everything was about the trial. Did James Titus kill her? Did he not kill her? No one really, really knew who she was, what her dreams were. I mean, she was an actual young woman who lived and was brutally murdered, and really, like many, many victims, kind of forgotten in the sensationalism of the trial and everything that followed.
Do you think something like that would happen today? I don't think so.
It's funny. In the book and in life, I often say to people, this was akin to the O.J. trial in the 90s. And really, the victims were kind of lost. It became about, did O.J. kill them? Did he not kill them? It was all about him in the aftermath of the murder. And that's really what happened to Tilly as well. So I don't know. That's just one example.
There is a parallel there, but the other parallel is that O.J. was, he was a football hero. He was this, he was that. So he was already a famous personality, and But
what happened, interestingly enough, is that Hackettstown was a tiny town. Centenary was a fairly new seminary. So the fact that there was this brutal rape and murder on the grounds of this seminary, and after 2 weeks, the Pinkerton Detective Agency was here, the local police nobody could figure out what really happened. And they were saying, this is going to become unsolved. We're not going to be able to solve this. And then the New York newspapers were here. Joseph Pulitzer's newspaper, The World, and the New York Times, they were camped out here. The World, that particular journalist, his name was James Creelman, and he is considered the father of yellow journalism. He began pointing the finger at James Titus, the janitor. And that's what began sort of the outrage about the fact that, it looks like maybe this is the guy, nobody's doing anything. And in the meantime, Tilly was put in a pauper's unmarked grave. So they started a monument fund, raising money nationwide. People sent in money, sketches, etc. And she was, within weeks, exhumed and moved to where she is now, and that monument erected. So even though small town, janitor, not really well known, the newspapers really, really drummed this up, and it became a sensation.
And I think people want to be able to, for the sake of taking something to fruition, closure, if you will, they're looking for somebody to just compartmentalize the blame. This is the guy, but we don't ever really know if that was the guy.
Correct. And yes, people want justice. And one of my points in writing this, I have my modern day character, Rachel. She moves into the cemetery as a new bride after just 3 months of knowing the cemetery keeper. And she discovers the monument on her first walk, and she becomes obsessed. And it's kind of a natural unfolding of their two stories back and forth. But her point eventually becomes, because for many reasons, she is asked to let it go. Let it go. Don't delve into this. But she feels like justice should never have an expiration date. Yeah, it's been 132 years. Who really did murder Tilly Smith? But again, to me, more importantly, who was this poor young woman who got lost in the sensationalism of it all, and whose name was actually smeared in the process, as many victims are, and it's a shame.
I got to tell you, when I first took a look at the book,
Uh-huh.
and of course, in this day and age with zombieisms and the cemeteries keep
Oh,
alive,
yeah.
you're thinking totally. And then wait,
Mm-hmm. I know.
It's a complete knowing you and having read your past books. I get this. This is Mary Ann. This is her. You're being true to yourself, truly.
Yes.
I think of the little girl that first saw the monument, as you mentioned before, and just exploring. And how long did that incubate and until you finally got to get it down on paper? Forever.
For 50 years, actually. Well, less than 50 years, probably about 45 years, because over the course of my life, I began having, just kind of like these coincidences with Tilly Smith. My mother worked at Centenary probably in the late 60s, early 70s for probably a week in the cafe and came home and told stories about the ghost. But probably the coolest thing that happened in my life was, a lot of people also know me as a realtor in town. And back in the 90s, I walked into a house on Sharp Street, and it was vacant, and I was previewing it for a client. And it was April, yet it felt like it was December. There were Christmas presents on the radiator, library books waiting to go back. The kitchen table actually had a pill bottle open and a pill sitting there, like life just stopped in a flash. I came to find out that this was the home of James Titus, the convicted murderer of Tilly Smith, that he lived there until 1952, even though he was sentenced to hang for her death in 1987. And even more amazing, the house was still in his family. His granddaughter, who a lot of people had in school, Mrs. Freeman, a lovely, lovely woman, had just gone into a nursing home. And as I walked through the dining room, what really, really made me pause was there were family photos on the wall. And I stood there looking at one in particular where there was Mrs. Freeman and her mother, and they were standing on the porch of that house, and in between them was a very old man sitting in a rocker. And it was obviously like the late 40s, and it was James Titus. And there he was. He lived for another 50-something, maybe 60 years after the murder of Tilly Smith. And I was just amazed, because here I was in his house. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So that scene is in the book. I give many of my coincidences to my character, Rachel. Again, she is the cemetery keeper's wife. She's new here, and she has a story of her own that she's all but buried, and she doesn't want to go back there. And when she sees the monument to Tilly Smith, she is overcome by a powerful memory in her past. And that is the beginning of the link between the two women across time.
It's amazing, and it's ordinary all at the same time. That's what I found about it. It's kind of extraordinary, really, but I think there's a relativity to the characters that people can relate to.
That was my hope, because the link between the two characters is crucial. If the reader does not feel the dynamic, what is pulling Rachel, despite the fact that she goes on to risk her marriage, her newfound family. And she's a woman who has had tragedy in her own past, so she's finally found a place where she belongs, and she's not alone anymore. And yet, because of Tilly and her need to bring justice for Tilly, but also to bring Tilly back to life in a way that redeems her, she risks everything.
Interesting. We're going to continue talking with Maryann McFadden. She is the author of The Cemetery Keeper's Wife. If you've ever wanted to meet Maryann, she is also going to be at Centenary University next week. We'll talk more about other books that she's written, as well as her plans for next week's book signing. Hope you will stay with us.
If it's in the news, chances are it's also on Newsline. Back to the program right after this on RNJ.
The Hackettstown Spring Festival is right around the corner, so if you want to save some money and time, pre-sale carnival ride tickets are the way to go. They're now available at Jack's Scissor Whiz, the Hackettstown Bid Office, Hackettstown Medical Center, Mama's Restaurant, and the Panther Valley Pharmacy. Just $30 for a sheet of 30 tickets, cash or check only, and only available till Friday, May 4th. Wristbands will be available at the field and are $30 for all night Friday and $25 on Sunday. Saturday's rides require tickets. A sheet of 22 for $40 or 50 tickets for $70. No wristbands on Saturday. Get them now and don't wait in long lines. For additional information, check the bid's website at hackettstownbid.com.
I got a feeling that tonight's gonna be a good night.
Tonight at Mama's and Cafe Bocce, enjoy half-price appetizers and 2 for $10 house wine. Or just slip in for your favorite cocktail. If you're looking for a local spot where the kitchen and bar are open late, make Mama's and Cafe Bocce your go-to place in Hackettstown 7 nights a week.
Tonight's gonna be a good night.
For half-price apps and 2 for $10 house wines, come home to Mama's.
There's more in store with the Hackettstown Education Association. This is Kim Andrewson, 5th grade teacher at the Hackettstown Middle School. Teachers celebrated Read Across America Day and brought Dr. Seuss into the classrooms. Gifts to promote reading were shared with the Hatchery Hill and Willow Grove students. The HEA marched in the St. Patrick's Day Parade. Prizes and smiles were shared with the crowd. High school teachers and students have been sharing technology tips with senior citizens to help them keep up with the trends. And faculty advisors have worked with the student councils to hold the Senior Citizens Prom and enjoy an evening of dinner and dancing. The HEA is working with the middle school to help with gifts for holiday boutiques. And come June, students will be thrilled with an HEA-sponsored snow cone machine at their field days. Our HEA Pride Coffee Klatch will bring teachers, administrators, and townspeople together to invest even more energy into our students' education. Quality education and community support. That's the Hackettstown Education Association.
You're listening to Newsline with Joyce Esty on RNJ. If you want to know what's going on, you're in the right place. Here's Joyce.
Thanks for staying with us. We're talking with Maryann McFadden. She is the author of the novel The Cemetery Keeper's Wife. It is extremely interesting because it ties the past, the histories of Hackettstown, in with the present day. And on Tuesday, she will be April 24th at 6:30. She is going to be at Centenary University in the front parlors of the C building, and she'll be there talking about her book and all that led to this, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, good for you. I mean, this is kind of, you said before, it's kind of taking it full circle.
It really is for a few reasons. Number one, to be able to begin this journey, bringing Tilly Smith back to life, so to speak, in the front parlors of the building where she lived and worked. I mean, the building did burn in 1899 and it was rebuilt, but there it is. That's the ground. Those are the grounds that she walked. That was where she was found, unfortunately, after her murder. And that's where she supposedly still roams as a ghost. So to do it in Centenary's front parlors is, for me, a dream come true.
I'm sure it is.
And my writing journey actually began right in those very parlors in 2006. At the time, I was still struggling to get published, and I originally self-published my first novel, The Richest Season. And I had my book launch in those front parlors. I had probably half the town there. I sold 100 books that night, maybe 120. I felt like a rock star because here I was, sort of feeling a little bit like a fraud because, oh my God, I'm self-publishing my book. But it went on 6 months later to sell at auction to Disney and to be translated. My second novel was translated. So I've got, 3 novels now. They're all American Bookseller Association awarded. I'm a Target breakout novelist. I've sort of lived the dream that I set out to live, but it began in those front parlors. So here I am launching book 4 right there.
Oh, how great.
Yeah.
Really. This time it's not you self-publishing, though.
No. I'm with the small press, who is the publishing world. I should backtrack a little bit. When the Book Lover was coming out, after my first 2 novels were with Disney, Hyperion, the economy in the book world took a huge tumble. I think everybody knows that. Everything sort of changed, and the book world changed along with it. So Hyperion, which was, again, owned by Disney, stopped doing adult fiction and went back to their tried and true celebrity books and children's books. So like many other authors, I sort of roamed around and finally found a home that I'm comfortable with. But I'm by far not alone. But the main thing to me is, my readers don't care how they get a book. They really don't. They just want to read it.
That's true.
So while I don't have Disney behind me anymore, I still have my readers. And that's the most important thing. And, I got an email last week from a reader in British Columbia who never read one of my books, happened to be at the library, picked up The Richest Season, and said, I'm writing to you for the first time I'm ever writing to an author to tell you how much your book changed my life. That's what you live for as an author. You really do.
And for young writers, what do you tell them?
Well, the main thing is to persevere. Publishing, any writer will tell you, publishing is it's such a difficult business. 1 million books a year now come out, which is crazy. So the good news is it's easier than ever for someone to get a book out there if they can't go the traditional route. Much, much easier than when I did that in 2006. But writing is really hard. So many people come up to me and say, I have a story I want to write, but I don't know where to begin. Well, let me tell you, it's going to be a long journey, but the first step is write your first page. Just write. Get your story down. You can always go back and edit, but the main thing is begin writing without torturing yourself with self-editing and self-criticism, because that's what stops writers. And know that it's going to take more than 1 or 2 drafts probably to get your work to where you want it to be. But when it reads effortlessly, that's when you know somebody put a lot of work into it. Even though it seems like it was effortless.
Yeah, right. It wasn't. That's true. We have talked. We've sat here. You've sat here talking about your books in the past. Mm-hmm. And, of course, you probably fall in love with each one of them.
I do.
Yeah.
I do, yeah.
Well, that's understandable. It's something that an artist does as well. I mean, we all do in one way or another. Is it just because this is the latest one that it's the one you like the best? Or can you tell us, where does The Cemetery Keeper's Wife, where does that rank with you?
It is, well, right now it's number 1. And, I think it will stay number 1 because it's been a story with me since I'm a little girl. And I do feel like, I say to people, I feel like I was meant to write this book, and I really do. But probably the most incredible thing is I spent so many hours and days of the past 4 to 5 years trying to figure out who Tilly Smith was and basically putting myself into her brain and her body to bring her back to life. Because when you're trying to interpret who someone was after 132 years and there is so little to go on, it's kind of a scary thing. And there are some historical writers who take one piece of information and create an entire fictional world.
Right.
I took a very big event and tried to stay as close to the truth as possible throughout the whole thing.
Well, that's it. It's not completely factual, obviously. It's a
Right.
novel, but it is there. There's some interpretation there, and
Yes.
you're going to find that. But I do like the fact that it's not something that was a viewpoint from far away. You're really up close to this.
Yes.
And I think everyone will get that from the book.
And you know what was also really, really amazing was in the midst of writing this book, one of my other incredible coincidences was that I was at jury duty in Belvedere about 3 years ago. And I was sitting in the courtroom and first of all realized, oh my gosh, this is the same courtroom where the trial was. Yeah, it's
That's
still,
right. That's an
yes.
historic building, surely.
But at the same time, I had Dennis Sullivan's book with me. Everybody knows In Defense of Her Honor. I love Dennis. I actually named a character after him, as you know, and he plays a pivotal role. And that's my way of honoring Dennis's very gracious gift of sharing his research with me. Also, I had another book about everyday life in the 1800s, and I was sort of working on a scene, and a woman walked by and said, oh my gosh, that's Tilly Smith, because she saw the cover of the book. And I said to her, yes, I'm writing a novel, and I'm sort of obsessed with her. And she went on to share a story with me about her sorority and Tilly Smith, something I did not know before, but that was the scene I was writing. I envisioned Tilly as working in that building, and you know there are these other women, young women there who are going to school because in addition to being a seminary, it was a college, and there had to be some interaction. And in that moment, it was like, bingo, I got this right. I know I got this right. I was interpreting her in the correct way. I got goosebumps right now. Just telling this story.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned some of your readers volunteer things.
Yes.
Some not even knowing what you were writing
Right.
about.
As I began announcing this book on my Facebook authors page, a woman wrote to me and began sending me photos of, in the book, Tilly's roommate is Stella Sliker. Now, I combined two characters. There was Maggie Donovan and Stella Sliker, but there were so many characters. I did a fictional thing, and I made Stella her roommate, which Stella did work with her. And this woman sent me pictures of Stella Sliker many years after Tilly's death. It is her great-great aunt. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a woman I wrote about as a young woman. And then another Facebook reader wrote to me that her great-great-grandfather's brother found Tilly's body. I mean, these were chilling moments for me because, again, even though it became like a legend, Tilly's murder became like a legend. Her ghost roams the campus. There's Tilly's Cafe, but it was a real murder. This woman died brutally. So that was really cool.
Have you gotten any feedback from local historians with regard to the book?
Not so much yet. I had Dennis Sullivan reading the book. I have not heard back from him yet. We had lunch. I love Dennis. He's such a wonderful guy. He will be there Tuesday night as well. I actually spoke with Ray Fry about the book a while back, and Catherine Rust from Centenary's theater department. I am hoping she will be there on Tuesday night to read an excerpt from the book. She read an earlier draft of the book and loved it. So everyone who's read it, the feedback has just been really, really incredible.
Well, because the story is so much a part of the area, that's one thing. But you took that and you really ran with it. You really put it in there. It's jam-packed with Hackettstown and the greater Hackettstown area.
And let me tell you, that was tough because originally it was too jam-packed. And I began, once I finished my first and second draft, my agent was saying to me, this book is just too research heavy. And I knew everybody here wanted everything, every little piece of minutia. But I was writing for, a global audience.
Yes,
and
right.
so I really had to pare it down. So I spent 2 more drafts pulling stuff out. What I'm hoping to do is, within the next 4 weeks, take some of that research and some of these photos and begin uploading it to my website, which is MaryanMcFadden.com, or you can go to thecemeterykeeperswife.com. But to have the information that didn't make it into the book available, because I know as a local, citizen, I would love to see all that stuff.
Okay.
And I don't tire of
Not
it.
just the backstory, the
Yeah.
the story that is sort of tied into it. If you
Yeah.
want more,
Absolutely.
Really. Oh, good for you. Excellent, excellent. And good luck with you Tuesday, 6:30. You'll be at the
Yes.
C Building, Centenary University, and sounds like it'll be a wonderful night. I hope
Yes.
people come out to meet you and to also really. This is just a great book. I so appreciate your coming in
Oh,
this morning.
thank you.
And talking about this. Really.
I want to thank
continued
you
success.
for having me again. I also want to thank Centenary College, especially the English department and Dr. Sharon Decker. They are hosting this event and making this dream come true.
Yeah, well, we love local girl makes it big. We
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
all right.